A few years back on this channel, I did a whole video about my thoughts on pellet grills. And in that video, I did my first cook on a pellet grill and shared my thoughts and opinions and kind of compared it to other cookers like this offset behind me or the Chud box or the Chud grill. And basically where I was at in the debate that pellet grills are the best cooker in the world, that are better than anybody in Texas, versus the other end of the scale, which is that these are easy bake ovens and aren't real barbecue. But after I put out that video, I realized that it wasn't exactly fair to judge an entire category of cookers after one cook, especially when comparing it to two other cookers that have spent years developing skills and learning how to run properly. Which is a really big part of the reason why I wanted to do the pellet grill series here on YouTube, where over the last 6 months I've thrown every protein and a bunch of different cooking styles at my Yoder YS640S pellet grill over there. And now I can finally give some honest feedback and answer questions like, will I be keeping this cooker? Will it replace any of my current cookers? What does it cook really well and what doesn't? And just my overall feelings at this point in life. So to answer these questions, I have created a list of pros and cons to hopefully get to the bottom of this, so people will stop coming up to me on the streets and asking me what I think about pellet grills. So to start out, we're going to start with the pros, and I think they're pretty obvious with a pellet grill, but we'll run through them really quick. And the first thing is obviously convenience, right? Dump in some pellets, push a button, all fire management is taken care of, all heat regulation is taken care of for you, giving you a lot more free time to work on your seasoning, your trimming, all that sort of stuff. And even as someone that really enjoys running an offset cooker or dealing with fire management, having that around as another option when I'm feeling particularly lazy or I've got a lot going on is really nice to have. The second pro, which I knew beforehand but I really didn't fully experience, was how versatile these pits are, or at least the one I have. You know, we can do everything from zero heat, low and slow cold smoking with a smoke tube. I use that for sausage making all the time, but it's great for smoking cheese or things like that, or getting some cold smoke on your brisket before you fire it up. Then you've got that middle range, kind of that 225, 275 region. That's what these pits are designed to do. It holds there really steadily, swings up and down a little bit, but nothing to write home about. And then you've got the high end. This thing goes up to like 600 degrees. So if I wanted to do a hot and fast rack of beef ribs or something like that, or get some really crispy skin on some chicken wings or a whole chicken, pellet grill is great for that as well. But then there's also so much more functionality that comes into play, like the fact that it's got that grill grate in there, so you can actually sear steaks in there or throw a pork chop on for a weeknight dinner. I use that feature all the time. That's why I don't have a gas grill out here. And then you can also get extremely hot with that pizza oven attachment that you can throw in there and get that thing up to like 800-900 degrees for some Neapolitan style pizzas, all in one pit. Pretty dang convenient. You can also take the grill grates out and put a big cast iron in there. You got top rack, you got bottom rack, a lot of space, very convenient, very versatile cooker. And one thing I figured out during this series that I did not see coming was how much I really like cooking on the top rack, because I don't have that on any of my other pits. But being able to put a drip tray down below or a water tray below it helps keep everything clean, gives you a lot more options. You know, you can save those drippings from a brisket and throw it in your chili or something like that. But also you can get some little S hooks and you can hang things from that rack, which is pretty cool. Third pro, which is also quite obvious, is just the ease of use, right? If you are brand new to cooking or brand new to backyard barbecue, this is definitely the pit I would recommend. Kind of goes into the convenience factor, but you just dump pellets in, turn it on, set your temp, and you're good to go. Really doesn't get much easier than that, because there's really not all that much skill involved with running this pit. There's knowledge and tips and tricks, like knowing where the hot spots are, the cold spots, using a smoke tube at the proper time, things like that. But as far as just cooking and getting heat on your meat, you really can't get any easier than a pellet grill. And coming from someone that's been cooking on an offset for my entire barbecue journey thus far, there's a lot of little things that are super handy about the pellet grill, like fuel availability, right? If you get an offset, you also have to have a wood supply, oftentimes a local wood guy, and hopefully they're chopping it right and seasoning it right. Hopefully they have the right type of wood, and it can be a big hassle. You know, even on a charcoal grill, you can't get Fogo Charcoal everywhere in the world, but I suppose there are other options. But for a pellet grill, you can get pellets pretty much everywhere. All the big box stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, they carry them. My local grocery store carries pellets, but I am in Texas, so I'm not sure about the rest of the world. But let me know in the comment section down below how easy it is to get pellets where you live. But of course, you can always just order them on Amazon if you want. Big box, but very doable. Another pro is that they're relatively small. You know, this offset is gigantic, and they make them a lot bigger than this. But not only is it the size, it's also the access to the firebox, you know? You gotta get in from the side, you know? You gotta have room to throw your logs in. So you need at least a few feet on the other side of the pit, where the pellet grills, you kind of go straight forward, because you dump from the front, and you're cooking from the front. So you need a much smaller patio and a lot less space for a pellet grill, which I think a lot of people can relate to. Accessibility to getting a pellet grill is also a lot better than a lot of these other cookers, you know? Like I said, Lowe's, Home Depot, where you get pellets, you can also get a pellet grill, where an offset, especially a quality one like this, you often got to jump on a wait list, and then you got freight to worry about. Whereas if you were just trying to start your barbecue journey tomorrow, you could probably find one locally pretty easily. Another pro, which some people may consider a con, is how easy it is to control with your phone, you know? From my couch, I can plug in probes to the pit or use my RFX wireless and connect to the Fireboard app, and I can change the temps from 180 to 225 while sitting on my butt watching a movie, while keeping an eye on the internal temps of the meat. So again, it goes into convenience and ease, but definitely can come in handy, especially if you've got a really busy lifestyle and you're just trying to put dinner on the table. Or if you had a job, don't recommend doing this, but you could throw a pork butt on in the morning and just monitor the cook throughout your workday and come home for a nice dinner. That's pretty rad. And the final pro for pellet grills, in my opinion, is that it's means to an end. And what I mean by that is that if you're not obsessed with barbecue and you're not really chasing that craft barbecue experience and you just want to put some really good barbecue on the table for your friends and family, that's a lot cheaper than going to your local barbecue restaurant. This pit will get you there. It'll never get you 100% of the way there towards a craft barbecue joint experience, but 85–90% of the way there is pretty good. And I think it's pretty cool that there's a cooker out there that anybody can use extremely easily that'll put some really good food on the table. May not be nearly as fun, but it gets the job done. Do I look as sweaty and sunburned as I feel? We just played a round of golf and I think I forgot to put on sunscreen. Little rosy schnoz going on. But before we jump into the cons of pellet grills, I want to tell you about another machine that I've been using a lot lately. This video is brought to you by Averon. Averon is pioneering fitness entertainment. Their mission is to end boring workouts and make fitness more fun. And as someone that's been professionally cooking really rich food for the last decade or so, let's just say my waistline is not where it once was. And back in the day when I used to go to the gym pretty regularly, one of my favorite workouts was the rowing machine. It's strength and cardio in one, and it activates 86% of your muscles for a low impact full body workout, plus up to 100 pounds of resistance for strength building workouts as well. And I've been toying with the idea of getting a rowing machine for the house for years at this point, and I'm super pumped to have the Averon Strong Rower here now. It's a very high quality machine with its wide ergonomic cloud seat that is super comfortable and promotes proper form. The foot pad is adjustable to accommodate you or anyone else in your household, but the best part is the immersive 22-inch rotating screen. And this screen does it all. You can stream movies from your favorite streaming platform, you can watch YouTube videos from when you were a lot thinner for motivation, you can take coached classes or play some of their super entertaining, very immersive games. You can play against your friends or any other members to keep you coming back for a workout you won't want to skip. There's seamless data and progress tracking. You can connect to your phone or your watch to provide detailed analytics on your performance, your progress, and your goals. They also have a gamified treadmill or a bike if that's more your style. This rower is a lot of fun, works incredibly well, and it also stores vertically if you're low on space. And right now Averon has their best pricing of the year, and you can get an additional $50 off any of their products when you use code Chuds BBQ 50 at checkout. Again, click my link in the description box of this video or scan the QR code on screen now to check out Averon and use code Chuds BBQ 50 to save $50 off any of their products. Thank you, Averon. And now for cons of pellet grills, and there are a few. None of them are too serious, so I might just be being a little nitpicky, and I think a lot of them might just apply to me because I'm making videos back here. But first and foremost, one thing that I don't like about the pellet grill is the maintenance. It requires the most cleaning out of any of the pits I've got back here. And to be fair, you probably should be cleaning the ash out of your cookers after each cook, but on an offset here, if I'm doing a quick cook and there's a little ash left over from the cook before it, I can still throw some charcoal and a few logs in there and it'll light right up. No big deal. On the Chud grill, there's so much space underneath to collect ash that I only have to clean it like every 2 months, which is very convenient. Chud box, kind of like the offset. I can get probably 2 or 3 cooks without having to clean it out, depending on how much grease is spilled down there or other things like that. But on the pellet grill, I have to clean that after every single cook, which I didn't think was a true thing. I've always heard that about pellet grills, but we saw it happen in real time on like the second episode of this series, where I tried to fire it up and it just wouldn't light up because all the ash in there from the pellets was blocking the igniter from igniting the new pellets, and that can cause all sorts of issues like back pressure and pellets going backwards. So ever since then, I clean it out every single time, and to be honest, it's really not that big of a deal, especially ever since I got this little mini shop vac. It's a quick job, nothing to complain about, but something that's mildly irritating. But speaking of maintenance, we also have that big baffle plate in there, and that gets a lot of crap cooked onto it, and it gets pretty gnarly, and definitely something I should be cleaning a little bit more regularly. And I see a lot of people wrapping theirs in foil, but I just hate the way that looks. But again, it still feels like that pit requires a lot more maintenance and cleaning than any of my other pits. The second thing, maybe even the first thing that I really don't like about pellet grills in general, and again, this might only be me because I shoot videos back here, but it's just the noise that thing makes. The fan and the whirring just doesn't sound like barbecue to me, and especially because I'm always mic'd up and trying to film back here. If I want to do another cook on that while I'm shooting another video on this, I really can't do that because it's just so distracting in the background. So hopefully one day someone will come out with a silent pellet grill. I think that would be awesome, but for now, we just have to deal with the noise. Another gripe I have with pellet grills in general is that there's no pit on this patio that gives me worse peace of mind than that pellet grill over there. And if you've been watching this channel for a while now, this is my 3rd pellet grill that I've gone through in 3-4 years because there's just so much that can go wrong, right? You got spinning parts, you got fans, you got spindles, it's electronics. The first pellet grill I ever got arrived to me broken and I had to solder in a new motherboard or something like that just to get the thing working. The second one I had, the auger snapped and broke, and then I tried to take it all apart to fix it, but all the screws had gotten corroded and burnt out, so I couldn't get the thing apart, which was really irritating. But then I got this Yoder, and this one seems really well built, very high quality build on that. Nothing has gone wrong yet, but there's still a lot that could go wrong, so I'll keep you posted on that. But when you're comparing it to this is is outside. There's no roof above this. It's maybe 1/3 covered. So it gets rained on. It's been hit with snow and hail and sleet, all sorts of things. But there's really nothing that can go wrong. It's just solid steel. So other than rusting out, this thing is pretty much bulletproof. Same goes for the Chud box. The thing is built like a tank. And the Chud grill is made out of stainless steel. So I really don't have to worry about that one. But with the pellet grill, I have to keep an eye on it. And it's the only pit out here that I actually put a cover on. And I've been out of town or at the Chud shop or something when a random storm comes in and I forgot to put the cover on this thing. And I always freak out because we got a bunch of pellets in here sitting above a bunch of electronics right next to my house. And again, we got a roof over here, but this thing still gets wet. And I'm not saying anything's gonna go wrong, but just the thought that a spark or something could ignite in there and this whole thing could just go wrong. Because water and electronics don't really go well together. I'm probably overthinking it, but it's pretty close to the house. I should probably move it. As you know, the cover looks fine. It's not a bad cover or anything like that, but I find myself a lot less likely to use it if there's a cover on it. And I may just be being annoying about having to use a cover on a grill, but it is kind of a knock that I can't use this pit in the rain because that's the only pit I really want to use in the rain because I don't really have to tend to it all that much. But probably the biggest con and the thing most people complain about when it comes to a pellet grill is just the flavor, right? And there's really no getting around that. We gotten pretty close to dialing in that smoke flavor with smoke tubes and wood chips and wood chunks and things like that. But even still, it's never going to be as good as burning a live fire. And I've tried everything. I've talked to a lot of people about it, and that's just kind of the nature of pellets burning. Now, to be fair, it is pretty close. Like I was saying earlier, you can get 85, 90% of the way there, and for most people, that is fine. But if you really are trying to hone your craft barbecue at home, there is a ceiling on these pits. So for someone that has an offset, I'm probably not gonna be using that to be cooking briskets all that often. But if you can only have one pit on your patio, I think this is a great option because once you learn your pit and how to get the smoke flavor you're after, you can get close enough. Close enough for dinner, I say. But also remember that low and slow barbecue like briskets and pork butts is only one aspect of this cooker because for grilling, pellets work great. For cold smoking sausage, the pellets work great. For pizzas, it was perfect. So when you consider the versatility of this pit and the flavor of the pellets is only affecting one aspect of it, you might be able to overlook it a little bit easier. And probably the biggest con about pellet grills for me personally is the fact that they're just not very fun to cook on. And this kind of goes back to the whole means to an end situation, where for me personally, I'm more about the journey than the destination, right? That's the craft part of craft barbecue. I really like tinkering with a fire. I really like having complete control over a cook. That way when I serve someone some food, I know that I did everything in my power when a lot could go wrong to try and make something that's super tasty. Because it's all those challenges that separate a good pitmaster from a great pitmaster. You know, wood densities, white smoke, dirty smoke, clean smoke, humidity, keeping that temperature steady, bumping the temps properly, being able to anticipate when a log is gonna break. That's kind of the fun part for me. Whereas on a pellet grill, you're just throwing your meat on and letting the machine do all the thinking for you. And you're just kind of hoping for the best at that point. You know, if you come out here and that thing's spiked up by 100 degrees, you can't really predict that because it's not a very intuitive cooker, where here it's fire, meat, exhaust. So if I need an extra few degrees, I'll just move the meat over or I'll move the fire back. And just having that controllability gives me a lot more peace of mind during a cook. But at the same time, we just did 6 months of cooking on this thing and it did me pretty well. So choose your own adventure, I suppose. Another annoying thing I was thinking about yesterday is the fact that I just spent all this time learning this specific pit. But if I went over to Evan's house and tried to use his Traeger, I'd probably have no idea what's going on. Which is kind of another con of pellet grills, right? Is because they're all built a little bit differently. On this one, the fire is all the way on one side, kind of like an offset. Whereas on the Woodwind Pro, it's right in the middle. And then all the exhaust systems are different. This one has a smokestack. Some of them exhaust out the back. So pretty much everything I've learned on this pit doesn't really transfer to other grills. So that's mildly irritating. Where on an offset, it's the same principle no matter what pit you're cooking on. You know, I've cooked on a dozen different offsets around the country doing events and things like that. And for the most part, I can get the hang of it within a few minutes. So something to think about. And one final thing to note about this whole pellet grill series is that I'm using a very high-end expensive pellet grill. And I think that's why I'm having a good experience so far and producing really good results. But like I said, I've cooked on some cheaper pellet grills in my day and did not produce nearly the results I did on this cooker. And when you're looking at high-end pellet grills, they're getting up to the $2,000 mark. And at that point, you're kind of competing with a similar price for something like this or a Chud box. So if you tend to think of pellet grills as entry-level cookers, I'd say that's more based on experience level as opposed to cost of entry, because quality really does matter on these things and you get what you pay for. So with the pros and cons out of the way, we can answer the question of what are my thoughts on pellet grills. And I think that they are a very useful cooker to have around. You know, if you're brand new to barbecue, this is an excellent place to start because you can spend your time focusing on seasoning, time, and feel as opposed to temperature, which I think will give people a lot better results because this has a learning curve to it. So does the Chud box. So if you get that as your first cooker ever, you're probably gonna get frustrated right off the bat and maybe not use it as much. Whereas the pellet grill, it's gonna be consistent and save you a lot of hassle. As for the intermediate cooks or people that have been cooking for 10, 20 years, I still think it's a great option to have around because you really can't compete with the versatility and convenience of a pellet pellet grill. You're probably not gonna get the exact same results that you would off of a live fire pit, but you know what? Sometimes close enough is good enough. So to answer the questions from earlier, will I be keeping this cooker around? And the answer is yes, definitely. I've had a pellet cooker on this patio for the last 4 years straight, and I don't plan to get rid of it anytime soon because it's just so convenient and it really comes in handy a lot more often than I thought it would. You know, for weeknight dinners off camera, I use this thing all the time. Cold smoking, pretty much every video I use that smoker. And there's a lot of times when it just makes more sense than any of these other pits. Like if I'm just trying to cook up some jalapeno poppers or I want to do some baking, bake some buns or something like that, the pellet grill shines. And there are several recipes that I made during the pellet grill series that I've made multiple times since because they came out so good. Right off the bat, the turkey breast, I've done that like 3 or 4 times since. The dry rub baby back ribs worked really well. Crispy skin chicken worked out really well. The leg quarters and the 0 to 400 chicken wings, I've done both of those since. Hot and fast, thing's great at it. And also, the crispy skin pork belly. Pellet grills are great for that. Definitely worth giving that one a try. As for things I'm not gonna be relying on the pellet grill to cook moving forward is probably just the staple Texas barbecue cuts. Your brisket, simple ribs, pork butt, things like that. And that's because with those items, the smoke flavor is really important, right? With a brisket, it's beef, salt, pepper, and smoke. But again, I'm spoiled out here. I've got this big offset, I've got all these cookers around, and I make barbecue content on the internet. If I was just an average Joe, that pellet grill would probably get the job done. So to all the angry macho men out there during this series that told me that I'm not making real barbecue on this easy bake oven and I need to pass in my man card for using pellets, I think the results of the food I cooked during this series really speak for themselves. And on the other end of the spectrum where there's people telling me that I can cook barbecue better than Aaron Franklin on my Traeger, I don't think you can, and we all need to calm down a little bit. But for me, I'm kind of right in the middle. I think it's a very useful cooker, very easy to use pit that makes sense for most people out there. And as for me personally, it's definitely going to make more appearances on this channel moving forward when it makes sense for me. But as always, if there's any thoughts or opinions you have that I did not cover in this video, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. Big shout out to Chef Tom from atbbq.com. Thank you for sending me this pit. It was a really fun series. I had a lot of fun cooking on it. I'll have a whole playlist on this channel of all the cooks I did during the pellet grill series if you want to catch up on any that you missed. And as always, I'm all ears for any suggestions of things you want to see me cook on this cooker in the comment section down below. And with this leftover steak that I cooked on the pellet grill a few nights ago, I think it's time for the official taste test. All right, y'all, and that is it. That is my thoughts and opinions on pellet grills in 2025. And after owning a pellet grill for 4 years and really diving deep over the last 6 months, I'm really glad to have another cooker on this patio that I know really well. And I think if you follow along this series and do all these cooks for yourself on whatever pit you have in your backyard, you'll be able to produce some really great barbecue as well. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you followed along the entire pellet grill series, let me know in the comment section down below. Big shout out to all the Team Chud members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace.